They saw the human kneeling beside the predator, hands slick with the beast's blood, face lit only by the dim bioluminescent fungi that clung to the cavern walls. To the alien soldiers watching from the ridge above, the scene was madness. The predator was a Varkeen, an apex nightmare of teeth and acid breath, responsible for wiping out entire scout teams. And yet, the human was feeding it, pressing a ration bar between those massive jaws as if it was some broken pet. Is he helping it? Commander Reth hissed, mandibles flaring. He's lost his mind. One of the scouts whispered. That thing slaughtered his unit. Reth raised the scope again, but the human wasn't trembling, wasn't afraid. His movements were careful, deliberate, almost ritualistic. He spoke softly, words lost in the hum of dripping water. The Varkeen's breathing slowed. Its 6 eyes flicked toward the human with something strange. Recognition. Reth's translator didn't pick up words, but tone it could read. The human wasn't offering comfort. He was making a promise. Hours earlier, the battle had gone wrong. The humans were escorting an allied convoy through the jungles of Varos 4 when the Varkeen pack ambushed. Acid and claws tore through armor, and only one human survived. Corporal Mason, a medic by training, soldier by necessity. His squad scream still echoed in the canopy. He could have run. Any sane being would have. But when he heard one of the Varkeen howling in pain, a broken cry beneath the same storm of fire that killed his friends, he went toward it. The others believed humans were ruled by empathy. They called it weakness. But what Mason did wasn't mercy. It was something else entirely. When Reth's squad finally moved in, weapons drawn, they surrounded the cave in silence. Human, Reth called through the translator. Step away from the creature. Mason didn't even glance up. It's dying, he said simply. We both are. Reth aimed his plasma rifle. It killed your people. I know. Mason's voice didn't waver. That's why it's still breathing. The commander hesitated, unsure if he'd misheard. The human rose, brushing blood from his hands. You think I'm showing pity? He asked, eyes burning in the low light. No, I'm teaching it. Teaching it what? Reth demanded. Pain, Mason said. Debt, and the cost of crossing humanity. The Varkeen shuddered, its massive lungs wheezing. Mason tore open another ration pack and shoved it between its fangs. The beast's eyes, once pure rage, now glimmered with a deeper confusion. Reth gestured for his troops to stand down. Explain yourself, human, he said cautiously. Mason crouched again, stroking the beast's scaled neck. When something tries to destroy us, we don't just kill it. We make sure it learns what that means. I'm not keeping it alive out of kindness. I'm letting it live long enough to crawl back to its hive and tell them what I did. Reth felt a chill creep beneath his armor. You're using it. Exactly, Mason replied. Mercy's just another form of weapon, if you use it right. The next morning, the Varkeen was gone. Tracks led east toward the hive clusters, and Mason followed, calm as if walking home. The alien soldiers trailed him from a distance, against orders, unable to look away. By midday, they reached the basin, the heart of the Varkeen nest. Thousands of creatures, massive and coiled like shadows, surrounded their wounded kin. The human walked straight into the pit. Is he suicidal? One of the scouts whispered, but Mason didn't stop. The injured predator let out a guttural bellow, drawing the others' attention. They hissed, claws clicking against stone. Mason stood unarmed, helmet off, face streaked with soot. You took my people, he said quietly, voice echoing across the hive. I took your pain. Now you'll take my message. He knelt, pressed his palm to the wounded Varkeen snout, and whispered something no translator caught. The creature recoiled, shuddering as if struck. Then it turned, snarled at its own pack, and tore into them. Reth's team stared in horror as chaos erupted. The wounded Varkeen went berserk, clawing and shrieking, ripping its kin apart in a frenzy. The others retaliated, tearing chunks of flesh in a storm of blood. And through it all, Mason stood untouched, watching. When the last one fell, he turned back toward the ridge, eyes cold, and said simply, Lesson learned. What did you do to it? Reth demanded when they regrouped later. Mason's jaw tightened. I gave it my blood, he said. A transfusion. Enough to keep it alive. Maybe enough to change it. The commander blinked in disbelief. You infected it? No, Mason said, shaking his head. I shared something worse, memory. Humans don't heal clean. We remember every scream, every loss, every face. I wanted it to remember, too. The air hung heavy between them. You call that mercy? Reth whispered. Mason smiled faintly. No, that was strategy. Days later, scouts reported something impossible. The Varkeen hives had gone silent. When drones flew over the region, they found the nests empty, tunnels collapsed, bones scattered in perfect spirals, as if the creatures had destroyed themselves. Only one remained, limping through the ash plains toward the human outpost. It collapsed outside the perimeter walls, barely breathing. Mason was there when they dragged it inside. The beast looked up at him, eyes wide and almost human. He knelt beside it once more, resting a hand on its skull. Now you understand, he murmured. Mercy isn't kindness. It's the beginning of justice. The Varkeen exhaled once, then went still. Reth never forgot that day. He'd seen humans fight, seen them burn worlds if they had to. But what haunted him wasn't their rage. It was their patience, their way of turning compassion into a weapon sharper than any blade. A week later, when Reth's superiors asked for his report, he hesitated before answering. The human medic neutralized the threat. He said finally, No, not neutralized, converted it. Converted? The Admiral asked. Reth nodded slowly. He made the predators fear themselves. There was a long silence on the other end of the comms. And the human status? Alive, Reth replied. And dangerous. Months passed. Word of what happened spread across the frontier. The Varkeen species vanished from the galactic conflict maps. Their hive self-destructed, their kind never seen again. But the legends didn't die. They said one survivor roamed the edges of human space, following the scent of blood and smoke, as if guarding something. Some believed Mason had made a bond, a twisted alliance. Others said he'd simply planted humanity's greatest weapon where no enemy could ever expect it, inside their own fear. Years later, Reth found himself stationed near the Terran border when an emergency alert flashed across the base comms. Unknown life form approaching. Biological signature. Hybrid origin. He rushed to the observation deck and stared into the storm beyond the defense wall. A silhouette moved through the dust, hulking, scarred, and flanked by drones that moved like shadows. When the winds cleared, he saw it. The same Varkeen, taller now, eyes glowing faintly blue, the color of human bioluminescent implants. Mason walked beside it, his armor worn, his face older but still calm. You brought it back, Reth whispered. Mason looked up. It came back on its own. Why? Because it remembers, Mason said. Because it learned. The beast bowed its head slightly, and Reth realized with a shudder that the predator no longer saw humans as prey, but as masters. In the end, the galaxy would call it an act of mercy. They'd write reports, treaties, and speeches about interspecies peace. But those who had seen it happen knew better. The human hadn't spared a monster. He'd rewritten it. And in doing so, he'd shown every watching race the same terrifying truth, that humanity's kindness was never weakness, only another form of dominance.